Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. First off, I'd like to say thanks for all of you that have been tuning in and watching my recent videos here lately, and some of the ones that I've done in years past as well. Well, I appreciate it, and hopefully you're getting something out of it. I mean, that's why we do this hobby. That's why I do these videos, is to share what I've learned over the last, gosh, I don't know, 4.5 decades of being in this hobby. It's all about sharing what we know and helping to grow and promote the hobby. I think it's very important. So what I'd like to talk about today is just kind of a brief video on weathering techniques. Now, this is something that, to be honest, I have dreaded doing to a finished model. I generally complete things and have completed things to a level that would represent a restoration Warbird, one that is kept up and cleaned and not in typical service that you would have seen in World War II. My first real big foray into this was probably when I refurbed my ME-109 quarter scale, where I really kind of, as far as I'm concerned, went all in on weathering. And once you do it, I have to say, you know, it's you don't have to be afraid of it. The cool thing about weathering is if you don't like what you see, you can generally just wipe it off and do it over again. So what I'm going to show you here today is just a very simplified process. I'm going to be weathering the belly of my my quarter scale FM2 Wildcat, which is really kind of a great subject to start with, because Wildcat bellies were filthy dirty. And the problem that most people have when they go take on a weathering project is kind of subscribe to the philosophy that the more you do, the better it is. And that's generally the opposite. It's really easy to get carried away. So I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I've learned and really kind of grown to love and be comfortable with over the course of the last few years, really. And share those with you, and hopefully you get something out of that. So for starters, you want to start with you know, some imagery or photographs representing the level of weathering that you want to do. And for me, I chose this photograph right here. This was actually taken off of airliners.net. This is the actual tail that I've actually modeled with my FM2, and kind of a nice shot of the belly. Not a completely clear shot, but it kind of shows you, it gives you a very good idea as to the extent of oil residue that's been blown back from this airplane while operating in air shows and that kind of a thing. So that's what I'm using as my basis for the depth of and intensity of the weathering that I want to go through. So start with a good subject photo or reference, or references, right? Obviously, you know, the more the merrier. I just chose this one because it really exemplifies what I'm trying to achieve here. Two, I use paper towels as the primary method of applying the wash, so to speak. And these are Viva signature cloth towels. I like them because of the extra fibers that are exposed on the surface. It helps to, you know, kind of wick the wash solution and spread it in a pretty unique fashion, I believe, versus like the Costco brand paper towel, which is, you know, more of a dense material, doesn't have as many exposed fibers. Additionally, obviously you want to have some wash, and what I have here is something that I've really kind of grown to love. And this is an acrylic wash by Monument Hobbies out of Colorado. I've got, as you can see here, a black wash and a brown wash displayed. It's generally, you wouldn't use just one single color for a wash as to weather a World War II model. You know, there's a lot of browns in some of this weathering, and mostly black in this particular instance with the Wildcat, but these are available through Monument Hobbies. I'll try to throw a link in the description if that's helpful. Some 1 ounce mixing cups. I usually just end up squirting some of the wash in the mixing cup, and then I use a brush, just a camel hair brush, nothing fancy, to apply the wash to the areas that I want to start weathering on. And then I've also got just a spray bottle of water here, and that's basically just to wet down the paper towels a little bit, just to make them not so absorbent, and it helps carry the wash down your work surface as well. So with that, why don't we get started? So before we get rolling with the application, I actually did the cowling and one half of the fuselage belly yesterday, and I just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like. And there's literally hundreds of different ways to do this. There's some masterful experts out there out on YouTube that do an amazing job on this type of subject. I mean, real artists, right? I'm not one of those guys. I'm just your average hobbyist that has a passion for trying to make things look fairly real. But this is the side that I have completed. And I don't have the reference photo in front of me, but it kind of does a pretty good job of replicating what the actual subject looked like from the photograph that I used. And then I just used some mild weathering down here on the lower surface of the horizontal stabilizer. So it kind of gives you an idea as to the finish and the sheen. You can see there's just a little bit of gloss in there, which is good because oil is glossy in nature, and so it is going to reflect some light. There's no clear coat on this or anything of that nature. The aft portion of the cowling, just after the firewall, is where most of the dirt and oil blow-by actually took place. So you can see the concentration of weathering here is fairly extensive. And with the gear doors, when the airplane's flying around with the gear down, obviously there's less exposure to that. And so in this case, there's actually a little bit of less oil content on the door itself. And then as you move back to this fairing here, you can kind of see that what we have developed back here is kind of a low pressure area when the airplane is in flight. And that's going to cause some puddling of the oil and the fluids as it travels aft through the air. Really hard for the camera to get a good representation of this. What I'm looking at is it actually looks very, very close to what the photograph reveals, with a very heavy intensity down the center line. Over here, we've got a clean slate, and that's what I'm going to work on here with this video to show you just my application technique. And you can take as many liberties as you want with this type of thing. It's really easy to overdo it. But in the case of the Wildcat, the white belly, that's okay. And again, if you don't like it, you can just wipe it down and do it over. And that's the really cool part about weathering. All right, why don't we get started here? Again, I've got my little mixing cup, just a 1 ounce cup, with just a little bit of wash fluid in there. Again, this is the Monument Hobbies Acryl Black Wash. And my little brush here, and I'll just kind of dip this in, flood that brush real well, and I'm going to start at the leading edge and work my way aft. So I'm just going to kind of brush on a nice heavy coat right at the leading edge where the weathering is going to start, and down to where the weathering is going to mostly start to end. Here you can just really just kind of goop it on, and I want to get all that wash inside that panel line there, and also around these fasteners as well. So I'll go over that fairly good as well. And then too, anytime you have a seam where there's a panel that's attached, you're going to want to brush that in there real well. And then once I've got that initial coat down, I'll set everything down and I'll grab this very slightly moistened paper towel, and here's where we just start drawing that fluid aft in the direction of the airflow. Just kind of go in that crease a little bit to draw some of that aft. And really, it's just the effect that you're trying to achieve here. Again, on these Wildcats, these bellies were just absolutely filled with oil. That was all from blow-by from the engines. And then go down. You want to just kind of minimize the overall area that you're working with initially. And we're going to come back to this, because what will happen is this acrylic, especially in the dry air that we have here in North Idaho, it dries fairly quickly. And that's okay if it does dry. You can remove it with some warm water and a good amount of pressure from a rag, or you can simply use some steel wool to rub that down and come up with a clean slate as well. So this is, it's going to take several approaches to this, and I wanted to get this first one down just to kind of show you what my technique is. And again, I am by no means an expert in this. I consider myself a novice. To the extent that where you can take this, obviously, with airbrushing and that kind of a thing is well, there's really no limits, right? This technique here for this type of weathering requires 0 airbrushing, which for some may work out best. Maybe you don't have an airbrush. In this case, all you need is a bottle of wash, an applicator, and some patience, really, quite honestly, is what it all amounts to. So now that we've got that part down, we'll take that same side of that cloth and we'll just start working this back till we get kind of a base finish. Now, the further up on the fuselage we go, the less oil content we'll have there, but it's still going to be dirty, right? I mean, again, these airplanes were filthy, and just coming back from a mission and in the Pacific Theater, right, in that area of operation. And I'll just keep bringing it back, and I'm going to do this several times from the leading edge all the way aft, knowing that the further aft we go, the lighter that oil content will be. So just bear with me on that. I'll speed this next one up so you can have a better idea as to what that's. So we're kind of applying a healthy amount here. Now, generally, this is going to have to be heavier because of all the surface detail on this particular panel, so I can carry that back. So basically three lines, right? Now, once we've got that down, we'll just kind of start carefully dragging it back, being careful to maintain where the airflow would be dragging any fluid across the fuselage. Making sure that we get it inside those panel lines, get inside those fasteners. And just keep bringing it on back. This first application is going to be fairly light. But you kind of get the idea here. It's definitely dirties up the surface. You see an immediate indication of how well that works. I'm going to start off using very light pressure. I'm really liking this effect. A regularity is the key here. You don't want the weathering to look the same for obvious reasons. Here we had a little bit that dried, and so what I can do is apply a little pressure here, and I can rub that all the way off, and then go over it again And it kind of takes care of that residual stuff that had dried. We'll go on to the next section here. So this initial coat, this initial pass, you know, the intensity is going to be fairly uniform. We just want to put the dirt where we generally see it off of our reference photos. And we'll just kind of come down to there. Make sure we fill in these panel line recesses. That's really important. And again, be mindful of the fact that we're going to be coming back and going over this again. And then we'll be rubbing things back with some steel wool just to get the overall effect that we're really trying to achieve here and look for. And just mild pressure, just enough to grab onto that fluid and drag it across your surface detail. If you're in a more humid climate, you're going to get more staying power out of the wash as you apply it, because it's not going to dry as fast. Here in North Idaho, we're in the winter, you know, we're at about 30% humidity here, if that. I think it's about 28% in my shop, so it's pretty dry. Wherever I want it to be heaviest, I will use the lightest amount of pressure for obvious reasons. Again, this is purely water-based. It's a water-based wash, but it quite honestly is fairly permanent. Like here, we've got a little bit of residue left. We'll just kind of rub that down here just to get rid of that. Now, I'm generally not to clear coat. I prefer not to clear coat, not just because of the weight savings, but if you had to touch something up, it's just a lot easier to do on the original surface than it is to touch up over a clear coat. You know, it happens. To me, it's just easier. Now, as long as you're not using a solvent-based cleaner to clean your airplane, you're not going to take any of this off. It's really good. In fact, even the exhaust for the engine oil, you can see here, you know, we're going to get a lot of natural weathering just from those two exhaust ports there. And it really is going to bring on a really cool patina and shade and tone to these areas immediately after the cowling as it goes back to fuselage. So over time, you know, the airplane will continue to weather itself. Chuck Hamilton once told me in a presentation that he gave is, guys, don't clean your airplanes. I totally get what he's saying, you know, but I do want to get the dust off of it if at all possible. And just kind of finishing up this initial application on the tail here. Back here on this catapult fairing, that is going to be in the free stream of a lot of oil, so it's going to be pretty dirty and fairly wet looking. Both sides of that, so keeping in mind that a little more there is good, is better. All right, so that completes the first application here. We're going to go back to the leading edge and just kind of start again and get progressively lighter the further aft that we go. All right, back to start with the second application here. Again, the same basic technique, just using my happy little towel here. When I'm going over these fasteners, like these Zeus fasteners here, I really want to drag it lightly. So more of the fluid kind of streaks aft. You can't really see it here, but you can in like these areas here where I just kind of put a puddle on each fastener, like right here as well, and then just pulled it back. It, I think, leaves a fairly realistic image on what the actual fluid will do. So I'm gonna go all the way down here, basically covering all this white to some extent, and then I'm gonna go back and just kind of buff it up a little bit with some 4/0 steel wool to kind of get the overall blend that I want and the transition from basically not so dirty to very dirty. You can also just, oftentimes I'll just apply a line of fluid directly on my cloth and just pull it back from there as well. It's, in many cases, especially if you're dealing with a fairly extensive weathering area, it's a little easier and a little less time consuming. So I'll do kind of a mixture of both. I'm really curious of what you folks think, and if you've done much weathering before, have you used this technique, or what your thoughts are on it. Again, this is just one of many different ways to skin the cat, so they say. But it's kind of fun. Again, I was very afraid of really jumping into this. You work so hard to get this realistic new finish on your airplane, and then when it comes time to weathering, you mess it all up. But really, it's allowing those creative juices that are inside of every one of us to a certain extent, and just allow us to put them into play. Now on this center keel portion, I don't know if you noticed on the image that I was using for reference, but it was very, very thick and kind of splotchy as it kind of collected around, certain areas of the fuselage and the surface detail and whatnot. Just going to hit this again. It's a little heavy, so we'll just kind of bring some more of that back. And if I see that I've, missed a panel line, I'll just go back over that with my brush and fill that in, and then gently pull it back. You're going to see on the belly of any Wildcat, or any World War II airplane that was piston powered, these panel lines just collected dirt. So it just takes practice, and again, if you don't like what you see, you can just go over it with a warm rag and take it all off again, or just rub it down with steel wool. And I'll be doing that here in a little bit. Down in these not so dirty areas, I'll just kind of rub some of this into the pigment of the paint, just to kind of darken it up a little bit and fill in, some of the fastener detail that we have here. And then I'll go over it with some steel wool until I get it to where I want it. Yeah, it's really starting to come alive here. Kind of fun to do. Get get some up here towards this leading edge section as well. Cool. I'm going to take one more line and run that across this center belly section here and kind of drag some more of that back. I'm going to have a fairly steady hand. Oops, you didn't get any of that. Whoop, that's no good. All right, now I've got a pretty good start here, and I'm going to take this 4/0 steel wool and start working my way from the bottom of the not so dirty part of the belly. And just gently rubbing it down. Taking a lot of that wash away, but it will leave whatever's around the fasteners, as well as those panel lines. It'll leave it in there. You just want to use a kind of a light rubbing action. Start from the bottom and work your way up. Basically, the majority of the dirt and oil is going to be centered between these two rivet lines here and joints in the panel. So you just kind of play around with it until you're getting the look that you're looking for. And then I'll end up having to go back through again and probably take another application to maybe blend this area a little bit more into here. But from my reference photos, that's where it showed most of it that tended to lie. All right, so I think I'm pretty much done, at least with this initial weathering, and just wanted to show you all what it ends up looking like. The gear is actually down now. I'll put that up for you, but overall, I think that I like the effect that I was looking for. Again, the weathering on this is it's pretty heavy, but again, it's my best at reproducing what we have over here on this drawing. I don't know. Leave me a note in the comments, see what you think. Cool thing is I can always add more or take away. This gear is so cool. Put the gear up. Just works so smoothly. And gear down. Bam. Well, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate your viewership. You know, we're doing this for fun, and it's kind of fun to share some of the techniques that we've developed over the years and share them with the modeling community out there. Again, this is just one example of what you can do with one single wash color to get a fairly, I think, accurate weathering result on a very dirty Wildcat. And this airplane was, you know, it was an air show performer. In fact, at Oshkosh last year, it got the dirtiest Warbird award. I didn't know that was a thing, but it was. Anyway, thanks again for watching. See you on the next one, and yeah, happy landings out there.